What's up guys, it's me, Jeremy. I finally got some curtains in the background, so now you guys can stop asking me why I got so many damn suitcases. Also, I hope you guys are having a wonderful Thanksgiving, filled with some awesome food. Anyways, the Poppy update is out on the PBE, and I got a chance to mess around with her in a few games here and there. I don't think she necessarily fits my playstyle as much as I would have hoped, and my builds on her are definitely not that great, so don't copy my builds. But she brings a lot of wacky mechanics and a similar playstyle to the old Poppy that I think a lot of people will enjoy. Also, just a heads up, I'm going to assume that you already know what Poppy does in this video, what the new Poppy does, so if you don't, take a look at the description for the champion preview. Let's get started. So the new Poppy is shaping up to be somewhat of a top laner, but she does have a little bit of potential in the jungle, and actually might have some potential on support in some very specific niche compositions. Now when I first played her, I thought she was actually pretty good, and after playing her for a while, I realized that it takes a ton of skill to actually use her tools properly of her W and her ultimate. So in the hands of a professional player, she's actually going to be pretty crazy. But for people like you and me, I actually think she is almost balanced. And I'm really fond of the design and direction that this rework is headed. The wacky tools that she has within her W and her ultimate are reasonably situational to the point that they become very difficult to use effectively. But if you do use it properly, it is honestly ridiculously overpowered. So if you play her perfectly like a professional player might, she's absolutely incredible. So overall, I think Poppy in this reworked state is pretty good, but is definitely difficult to play. Now her W stops any dash instantly right in its track, and the activation is pretty much instant, so you can wait for someone's dash and then activate it after they dash if you're fast enough to instantly stop their jump and deny the gap closer. Imagine someone like a Rengar tries to jump in on your 80 carry and then bam, you pop the W and their jump gets denied, and that's pretty much their whole assassination attempt ruined right there. And the instant activation of her W makes it very difficult for the opponents to outplay you on your W if you're playing well, since you can just hold it until they use their dash. Like, you don't have to use it preemptively, right? And so instead of trying to outplay it, it creates this dynamic of sort of trying to play around it. And the fight as well that you could set up with her ultimate is quite powerful too. If you hit like the full charge of the ultimate on someone, they get taken out of the fight completely for like 10 seconds or so, and that's pretty significant and is more than enough time to clean up the 5v4 fight. But it is quite difficult to land properly. You can also use the ultimate when you're ganked to sort of like disengage or to turn the fight into a 1v1. So once you get your ultimate at level 6, you become pretty much ungankable when the ability is off cooldown, provided you don't miss it, of course. And as well, her ultimate can be used as just a straight AoE knockup, or to prevent maybe like a flank or protect your team. So it's definitely a really versatile tool, and is something that you can make amazing use of if you're using it effectively. So the reason why I say she is almost balanced rather than, you know, full-on overpowered, despite the incredible tools and utility that she has in her kit, is because her laning phase isn't necessarily that strong. The range on her Q is, you know, minuscule, and the cooldown on her passive is really long, so trading in lane is quite difficult versus a poke-heavy champion, especially since she doesn't have very efficient sustain inherently in her kit. And she also doesn't have the all-in potential that her old ultimate used to bring her, and she doesn't have the burst potential that her old Q would give her, since her new Q has the damage confined into 2 parts rather than just a full-on burst. However, her sustain damage isn't terrible still, and that max % health damage shouldn't be underestimated, so she can definitely do well in matchups where the enemy is not going to outpoke or outsustain her quite heavily. She also does have that reliable gap closer in the targeted E, so if you can pin someone on a wall, you can do very well versus a squishy champion. So the counter mechanics and outplay potential is there in the bad matchups. It's just that the weakness of the Q having such a short range and the passive having such a long cooldown is a little bit too significant and too easy to take advantage of for quite a few champions in lane. She also has a pretty long animation on most of her abilities with the exception of her W, and her ultimate does get cancelled if you get hit by crowd control, cancelled and put on full cooldown, so it takes some getting used to and playing around, but the long animation kind of leaves you open and easy for someone like a Janna or maybe like a Thresh to kite and outplay you. So she definitely does have some hard counter picks outside of her lane as well. And one thing I thought was interesting is that her passive is an auto attack reset. So if you time and position it properly, you can actually get a nice chunk of damage off. And her passive also procs stuff like Ravenous Hydra, anything that, you know, a normal attack would. And even though it's technically a range attack, so that's pretty cool too. And her team fighting is, you know, a little bit weird, but I do think the best way is to maybe force someone out with her ultimate and then play kind of like a tank frontliner where you stop engages using your W and try to protect your backline and deny your opponents. She doesn't really have the damage or stick potential to be good at diving in onto the opposing carries unless you are super fed or if you can get a stun off of your E to guarantee the 2 procs of your Q and deny the gap close or deny the escape of your opponent using the W. But she is awesome in fights in the jungle since you have a bunch of walls around you to land a stun with your E on, and she's also nice if you can get a flank since you can use your E to push a target into the rest of your team. I do think she is quite strong in the hands of the right person. Probably overpowered, honestly, at least in the state that I played her in, because she has a little bit too much utility, I think, that can potentially create too many strong situations overall. But I doubt that she will have a positive win rate in solo queue actually, or at the very least it's going to be very close, just because she is quite difficult to play and requires a decent amount of skill to make work. So, what do you think about Poppy? Leave a comment and thanks for watching.
Her body's gold like September. She burns through the night like an ember. And all those things we try forgetting, I remember. But we say we all fine, we all fine. Sunny day dreams and we up now. Vodka lemonade, I serve it up, it goes down. 7